Uh, this week's talk is going to be about compounding and the importance of starting early. Now, people know what interest is. You know, you put $100 into the bank at 10% interest or whatever it is, and at the end of the year, you get $10, right? The next year, you also get another $10. So the next year, it's 120, 130, 140. You know, you get $10 every year. That's simple interest. Compound interest is special because not only do you get interest on the principal, the $100, but you also get interest on top of the interest. So after the first year, when you have $110, now you get 10% on that $110, which is $11. So the second year, you don't end up having 120, you have 121. The next year, you have 133, and so on and so forth. That green curve on the right, that green line, that exponential curve that's going upwards, that's compound interest. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on because it's growing on top of the original growth. And the red portion is the simple interest. It's just a straight line, right? Here's an interesting experiment, or not experiment, but just an idea. If you were to save $500 a month, it would take you almost 167 years to save $1 million. But if you were to invest that money instead at 8% in the stock market, it would only take you 33 years to reach $1 million. Pretty cool, huh? Now here's another example, another thought experiment, I suppose you could say. Let's say a genie came up to you and offered you a choice between $1 million or a magic penny that doubles every day for 30 days. So the first day it's worth 1 penny, the second day it's 2 cents, 4 cents, 8 cents, 16 cents, 32, and so on and so forth for 30 days. So would you take that penny or that $1 million? Most people might be tempted to take the $1 million because it's it's a lot of money, right? And it's a penny is a penny. It's like how big can it get? Well, it can get pretty big. But after 30 days, that doubling penny would be worth $5.4 million. So if you took the million, you'd be missing out on over $4 million of extra money. Yeah, take a look at this chart. It's really it's not a lie. It doesn't it's just doubling every day for 30 days. It's compounding and exponential growth are pretty crazy. Now, most investments, you want to know how fast it'll take to get your money back, how fast it'll take to double, right? So there aren't very many investments that will double every day, but there is a good way to find out how much or how long it'll take for your money to double, and it's called the rule of 72. Now, stop me if this is not understandable, if you have an issue with this, but basically, it's not an exact number, it's an approximation, but it's good enough for our purposes. To know how long it takes for an investment to double, you do 72 divided by the interest rate. So, for example, if you have an interest rate of 12% on an investment, it would take 6 years for that money to double, because 72 divided by 12 is 6, right? So if you have $100 in a savings account and you're getting 4%, how long would it take for that money to turn into $200, right? How long would it take for $100 to double to $200 at 4%? Can anyone tell me? 18 years, that's right, because 72 divided by 4. Now, go ahead and leave your microphone leave it open, and let's go through these. Here's some math problems, right? So it doesn't just work for this rule of 72, the doubling of investment. It doesn't just work for investments, it also works for debts, because debts are someone else's investment. You're paying them, right? So if you have a credit card, let's say you have, I don't know, $10,000 on a credit card, and the credit cards tend to be around 24% or so. So let's say you have $10,000 on a credit card at 24%. How long would it take for that money to be $20,000 if you don't pay it down? How long would it take for that money to double? Can you tell me?
72. Is it 3 years?
It would take 3 years, because 72 divided by 24 is 3, right? And so if you do have credit card debt, this should be a wake-up call, because your money will very quickly double if you don't do anything about it. So get out of debt. This is the #1 thing that keeps people back from achieving their financial freedom, their goals, is debt. So get out of debt as fast as you possibly can. All right, next question. Money in a savings account is earning you 1%. How long would it take to double?
72.
It would take 72 years. Now, this isn't exact. It's something like 71 years or point something, but it's good enough for us. Savings account, you get 4%. How many years would it take to double?
18.
And if you have a speculative investment, like a higher risk investment, you get 18% a year. How many years would it take to double?
4 years.
That's right. 72 divided by 4 is 18. 72 divided by 18 is 4. So I hope this shows. I hope this was a good thought experiment. I hope you got something out of this. And I just want to show you graphically, not graphically, but this. If you get 3% on your investment, it takes 24 years for your money to double, right? So you go from 10,000 to 20,000 in 24 years. Compare that with 6%, where you do the same thing in just 12. And so in 24 years, you get to double twice. And if you have 12%, you do that very quickly in 6 years. So you get to do this doubling time and time and time again. So a 12% rate of return is going to give you $2.5 million versus a 3% is only going to give you 40. So return is very important. The amount of times it can double in your lifetime is very important. And here's a graph showing compound interest versus your contributions. The orange line is how much you contributed. This one assumes you're getting 8% on your money and you're contributing $5,000 a year. So at first there isn't much of a difference. You know, after 5 years you've contributed 25,000 and you have like 32,000. So it's not that much. But as time goes on, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the reason for this is $100, 8% of $100 is $8. 8% of $1 million is $80,000. So as time goes on, the more money you have, the more money you make. It's exponential growth, right? So let's talk about starting early. Now that we've talked about compounding interest and how powerful exponential growth can be, let's look at these two people. Bob, right? He invested for like 10, 11 years, starting at age 25 to 35. He invested $5,000 a year. He never invested anything else. He stopped at 35, right? His friend Susan, he saw that Bob was making some money. He had some nice savings. And so she's like, you know what? I want to do that too. I spent my money a bit unwisely in my 20s, but I'm in my 30s. I'm grown up. I'm going to start investing. So she invests $5,000 a year from age 35. But she doesn't just go 10 or 11 years. She goes all the way through retirement. She continues saving, which is what Bob didn't do, right? He should have, right? Continue saving your whole life. And you'd think that Susan ends up with more money at age 60 because she contributed so much more than double, right? But actually, Bob ended up with more money. Check this out. So this is Susan right here. She invested a total of $130,000, and at 60, she ended up with $432,000, which is substantial, but not as much as Bob. He only invested for 11 years, you know, from 25 to 35, $55,000. He has almost $200,000 more than Susan because, and even despite not investing anything after those 11 years, he still ends up with more money because he started earlier. It's very important to start early. And again, remember what I was saying, $100 is $8, and $1 million, 8% is 80,000. So at first, you know, 8% of $5,000 is only $400. It's not a big return. You know, when you're first starting out, it's kind of daunting. You see these returns, it's not that high. But as you go on, the more money you have, those are annual returns, money that is made for you passively. So think about that. Start early, invest as much as you can, and you'll be pretty well set when you retire or even earlier. And another example of how important it is to start earlier, you know, just a few years can mean millions of dollars. This first person starts investing at 25 with $5,500 a year, again, assuming 8%, which is what the stock market tends to return. And this person starts just 7 years earlier at age 18. They both go through age 65 and you know, contributing $5,500 a year. But this person who started just 7 years earlier, something like 38 grand, has $1.2 million more than the person who started a little later. So it's huge. And just to hammer it in a little more, here's one person who started at age 20, and here's a person who started at age 25. Almost $700,000 difference just from those $25,000, those 5 years of waiting to start investing costs the second person $700,000, $688,000. So if you haven't, if you didn't see last week, if you downloaded it from last week's talk on budgeting, this is the same file. Otherwise, go ahead, head over to this link, tiny.cc/CEIA5Y. Download the file, and you can see, we're going to go to the calculators tab, and you can play around with these numbers, whatever you want. So for example, if you're somebody who's just starting out, you want to see how much money you'll have. Let's say you have nothing right now and you're willing to contribute, I don't know, $300 a month to your retirement investments, which is a total of $3,600 yearly. You're getting 8% on your investments, and inflation averages 2%, right? So you can change all the stuff in yellow. If you start at age 18, by the time you hit 65, you'll have $2.5 million almost. Compare that to someone who only starts at age 35, who has like a quarter of that or less, right? So yeah, play around with this if you like. You can change anything in yellow, and if you want to calculate how much money you need, how much you need to save, what your net worth will be, play around with this. So that's in the file. And so now let's get back to the finally, I'd like to show you an extreme example of how powerful compounding can be. So the island of Manhattan, the world's financial center, right? It's worth about $3 trillion today, the land and the real estate. But in 1626, almost 400 years ago, Dutch settlers kind of bought the island of Manhattan from the Native Americans for like 24 bucks worth of trinkets. And it seems like they got ripped off, right? But if they had been able to invest that money at 8% from 1626 till today, it would be worth over $350 trillion, which is over 100 times the current value of all the real estate in the land. So it's pretty, yeah. So I just wanted to leave you with that. And now finally, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So it would have been best if we had all started saving and investing 20 years ago, but we can't change the past. It's never too late to start saving and investing. So I encourage everyone watching this to start as soon as possible, to allow the power of compounding to grow and provide you with financial independence one day. Thank you.